My name is Edwin and today I'm going to be talking about the sport wrestling. The reason I chose wrestling is because it's a sport that gets overlooked a lot today by a lot of people, and most people don't know much about the sport wrestling. But it has a very fascinating history, and it has a lot of interesting points that I want to talk to you about today. And finally, I'm going to going to tell you about the different levels of competition that wrestling has. So here's a little bit of the history of wrestling according to ThinkQuest.org and collegesportscholarships.com. It says that you can trace the history of wrestling back 15,000 years, where they found cave drawings in France, and wrestlers were using most of the moves and holds that we use today. In ancient Greece, wrestling occupied a noticeable place in the legend and literature of wrestling. Wrestling is brutal in many aspects. The ancient Romans and the Greeks eliminated a lot of brutality by setting rules and regulations. Wrestling remained popular during the Middle Ages and enjoyed the support of many royal houses, including those from France, Japan, and England. Some of the early American settlers brought a strong wrestling tradition with them from England. The colonies found wrestling very popular among the Native Americans. Amateur wrestling increased throughout the early years of the nation. Wrestling served as a popular activity of country fairs, holiday celebrations, and some of the military exercises. Greco wrestling has evolved into the modern form of collegiate wrestling. The first wrestling tournament was held in New York City, while the first wrestling competition in the modern Olympic Games was held in St. Louis, Missouri. FILA were founded in 1912 in Antwerp, Belgium. The first NCAA Wrestling Championship were also held in 1912 in Ames, Iowa. USA Wrestling became the national governing body of amateur wrestling in 1883 and conducts a competition of all levels. Some of the things that wrestling taught me were self-discipline, and it teaches you to push yourself not only to physically but mentally. While you're wrestling on the mat for 6 minutes or sometimes more, you have to be able to use every muscle in your body and use your brain at the same time to make sure that you don't get stuck in a move and lose the match. The one thing that a wrestler should have is the 3Ds, which they are discipline, dedication, and a desire to go out and wrestle and be able to win a match. The major thing in wrestling is watching your weight, watching the things a wrestler eats, making weight on time, because if you don't make weight on time, your coach is gonna get mad at you and you won't be able to wrestle. Another thing that benefits you from wrestling, from being a wrestler, is that sets your mind into self-discipline, and it helps you to get confident on beating your opponent, and it teaches you to be and do anything you put your mind into. So the different levels of competition, they're from different ages. There are some from 4 to 8. They usually have, like in my high school, they usually have like a little Falcon kids for ages from 2 to 8, where they come and practice, and then they go to a tournament every weekend. And there's everybody, like every high school has a little kids wrestling. So all the high schools, they make the big tournament for the little kids, and they go out and wrestle each other. And that's just a way of them for getting into wrestling, and that's a good way for them into getting self-discipline too, and it gets them out of the house from keeping them from playing games and all the things like that. So wrestling is not only good for little kids, but it also helps them get discipline and be somebody in life. So here's some of the pictures that the caves have, that they found in the caves in France. And here's a quote that I chose by Dan Gable, where it says, once you have wrestled, everything in life becomes easier. And that's a picture of me picking up this guy, because once I wrestled for 7 years. I everything in life for me became easier. Like any chance that came through my life, I was ready to take it. And so wrestling is a good thing for a lot of people, but not many could take the practices. So a lot of people quit. So that's pretty much the story of wrestling, the story and the history of wrestling. Thank you.